What it means to me, I think, harm reduction, I don't join many clubs. In fact, I'm never asked, funnily enough, I'm never asked to join many clubs. But for many years, the only card I carried was a member of the International Harm Reduction Association. For me, it was something that the first thing in my employment that I could really grab hold of and thought, well, I've got some kind of ownership of this. I feel part of this movement. And I guess when you kind of talk to people these days who are involved in the recovery movement, you know, a lot of that kind of element is still there, that it's something new, it's something where you feel as though your input as an individual can make a difference. So I could see the sense in it, I believed in it, and something that, you know, you've been involved in and you believe in and you can make sense of, makes you feel good, it makes you feel happy. So harm reduction made me feel happy. I remember when it struck home to me was the kind of concept of harm reduction. We had, at the time I was based above the old drug unit in Prestwich, and John Strang was the consultant there, and they used to have these sort of monthly meetings of all the drug workers in the Northwest, and in those days you could fit all the drug workers in the Northwest into a fairly small room. And we'd had a few talks about HDLV-3 as it was then, which became HIV. And then we had Roy Robertson came down in the very early days, before he'd really even published anything, and told us about what had happened in Edinburgh and about the fact that, you know, everybody had become infected in this kind of small group that he was working for. And it was then I kind of thought, well, this is really, really kind of like serious. And this is really serious. And what do you do about it? And it seemed fairly clear that, you know, what you do about, you know, if people who haven't got access to needles, you give them clean needles. That it all kind of like made sense. So I never really bothered about any kind of like definitions or anything like that. It was, well, this is harm reduction. Oh yeah, I understand this intuitively. I think there's a few elements to harm reduction, and I think it's the kind of meaning of it has changed a lot in you know, countries like Britain and Australia. I think it's partly to do with the kind of backlash and some of the kind of nonsense that's been, you know, written about what it is and what it isn't. But for me, it still retains those elements of what it was like in this country when we first started doing it, when you go and see people from other countries. I kind of listened to a presentation at one of the conferences a year or so ago on someone who was, it was a project on the kind of border of China. And it was literally that this intervention of giving clean needles to people and giving people methadone and bringing in, it was like it was back then. It was almost like, this is kind of really, really important. This is life-saving thing. And I think that split is between kind of Western countries that have had it for a while and sort of, you know, countries like China and, you know, various kind of any other countries in the world. It's fairly evident in the way that it's kind of viewed, so that you've got the United Nations and the World Health Organization quite clearly saying, well, look, you know, this is the best way of preventing viruses, of preventing death, and all those kind of like boxes they've got to tick. Whereas in Western countries now, that kind of backlash, it's become more about the kind of morality of, well, this is a really bad thing, we really need to stop it. And in some ways you've gone back to that kind of simplistic thing. And it's got kind of messed up and confused because it's been around a while. But that kind of purity in that, you know, this is about a pragmatic way where you can actually make a difference, and not in a difference in terms that you get, you know, you get a kind of little badge for doing it. This is about saving people's lives. So for me, that kind of importance of harm reduction was kind of like really there. And as I said, I think you tend to see it more in countries that are kind of establishing harm reduction services for the first time than you would in Britain.